Everyone at Brightwater General thought I was just the night shift nurse who talked too quietly and smiled too much. They didn't know that by the time the story ends, half of them would be looking at me like I was either a saint or a criminal, and for 3 weeks, I wasn't sure which one I'd end up being. My name is Della Monroe. Everyone calls me Della, and I've worked the 3rd floor of Brightwater General for 6 years. Small hospital, small town. The kind of place where the security guard knows your coffee order and the cafeteria lady asks about your mother by name. I liked it that way, quiet, predictable. Nothing that happened on my floor ever made the local paper. Until room 314. Room 314 belonged to Arthur Kessling, 78 years old, admitted for congestive heart failure and dying slowly in the exact way that hospitals are built to manage, but never built to fix. His daughter, Renata, visited every single day at exactly 11 a.m., dressed like she was already going to the funeral. Dark colors, low heels, a leather folder tucked under her arm that she never opened in front of anyone but her father. His son, Corwin, visited maybe twice a week, always a little breathless, always checking his phone before he'd even said hello to his dad. I liked Arthur. He had this dry, papery voice, and he used to ask me riddles to keep his mind sharp, he said, though I think it was really to keep himself from thinking about the ceiling tiles too long. Nurse Monroe, he'd say what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening. And I'd say, "You already told me that one yesterday, Arthur." And he'd laugh like it was the first time either of us had heard it. 3 weeks ago, Arthur's heart stopped at 2:47 in the morning. I was the only nurse on that wing. I called the code. I did compressions until the crash team arrived. We got him back. For 11 days, we got him back, weaker every time, until his body simply ran out of road. When he passed for good, it was peaceful, it was expected, and it was, by every clinical measure, nobody's fault. Except 3 days after the funeral, Renata Kessling filed a formal complaint against me. She said I had been negligent, that I'd delayed calling the code, that I'd been on my phone at the nurse's station instead of monitoring her father's vitals, that his death was preventable, and I was the reason it wasn't prevented. She said she had proof. I remember standing in the administrator's office, my hands shaking so badly I had to sit on them, and I remember thinking, I don't understand. I was there. I did everything right. Why would she say this? Here's what nobody tells you about being accused of something you didn't do. The accusation doesn't need to be true to ruin you. It just needs to exist. Within a week, I was suspended, pending investigation. Within 2 weeks, the story had leaked, not to the papers, thank God, but to the hospital grapevine, which in a town like ours is worse. People I'd worked beside for years started looking at me differently. Some looked away entirely. My coworker Priyasha, who I'd trained myself, stopped meeting my eyes in the break room. The hospital's risk management team pulled the electronic charting logs, the vitals monitor data, the code team timestamps. Everything on paper said I'd acted within protocol. The code was called 90 seconds after the monitor alarm, well within standard response time. But Renata had something else. She said she had a recording. She claimed that on the night her father coded she had been on a video call with him, a nightly ritual, she said, since he couldn't sleep without hearing her voice. And that the call had captured me, in the background laughing at the nurse's station instead of watching his monitor. I didn't remember laughing. I didn't remember anything except the alarm and running. But memory isn't evidence, and grief makes people believe things they need to believe. I understood that, even as it was destroying me. Renata wasn't lying because she was cruel. She was lying because the alternative, that her father simply died, that nobody failed him, that death sometimes just happens to good people even when everything is done right, was unbearable to her. Somebody had to be responsible. It couldn't be nobody. It couldn't be her for only visiting once a day. It had to be me. The hospital board scheduled a formal hearing. My union rep, a tired but kind man named Oscar Van Tio, told me flatly, if she produces that recording and it shows what she says it shows, Della, there's nothing I can do for you. You need your own evidence, or you need a miracle. I didn't have either. What I had was Arthur's voice in my head, asking me riddles, and a growing, sick certainty that I was about to lose the only job I had ever wanted, over something that never happened. If you've ever been blamed for something that wasn't your fault, really blamed, the kind where people's whole opinion of you shifts overnight, you already know there's a specific kind of loneliness in it. That's part of why I wanted to tell this story. If it's resonating with you at all, hit subscribe. I've got more stories like this one, and I think you'll want to be here when the next one drops. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep, so I did something I probably shouldn't have. I drove to the hospital at midnight, badged into the third floor with my still active, barely credentials, and sat in the empty break room outside room 314, now occupied by someone else's grandmother. That's where Corwin found me, Arthur's son, the one who visited twice a week, breathless, phone always in hand. He looked terrible, hadn't shaved, hadn't slept either, by the look of him. I know you didn't do it, he said before I could even ask what he was doing there. I just stared at him. He sat down across from me, rubbing his face with both hands like he was trying to physically scrub something off. My sister needs someone to blame, he said. She's needed that her whole life. When Mom died, she blamed the surgeon. When her marriage ended, she blamed his mother. She's not a bad person, Della. She just can't survive feeling helpless. Blaming you is the only way she can feel like something could have been done. That doesn't make it okay, I said, my voice cracking more than I wanted it to. She's going to end my career over a story she needed to tell herself. Corwin went quiet for a long moment, and then he said the thing that changed everything. There is a recording, but it's not what she thinks it is, he explained. Arthur, stubborn in private, even in decline, hadn't wanted his daughter fussing over him every night, so he'd started taking her calls on an old tablet propped against the window instead of holding it, letting her talk to him while he pretended to already be half asleep. That tablet's camera didn't just face him, it faced the door and beyond the door at an angle. Part of the nurses stationed down the hall was visible through the gap when the door was left ajar for the overnight monitoring. Renata had watched the recording of that night obsessively, grief looping it over, and somewhere in the blur of exhaustion and heartbreak, she had convinced herself that a nurse's shape laughing at the station, a laugh that Corwin said actually happened almost 40 minutes before the code during a completely unrelated moment with another patient's family, was me neglecting her father in real time. She'd spliced two memories into one accusation without meaning to lie. Grief had just rewritten the timeline for her. I've seen the full recording, Corwin said. Renata sent me a clip, the part she wants to use tomorrow. But my dad's tablet backs up to the family cloud automatically. I have the whole night, every minute of it. My hands were shaking again, but for a different reason now. Why didn't you say something before now? I asked. Corwin looked ashamed. Because if I hand this to the hospital, it doesn't just clear you. It shows my sister lying, or at least believing a lie so hard she nearly destroyed someone with it. I've been trying to get her to just drop it. Quietly. I didn't want to have to choose between protecting you and protecting her. And now you're about to lose your job for something that isn't true. And I can't let that happen just to keep the peace in my family. The hearing was at 10 the next morning. Renata arrived with her leather folder, opened for once, a printed transcript inside, and a laptop cued to a 14-second clip. She played it for the board. Grainy, dim, a shape at a nurse's station, a burst of laughter. She said the timestamp embedded in the video file proved it happened during her father's code. That was the moment Corwin stood up and asked to submit the full, unedited recording, time-stamped uncut 41 minutes of continuous footage instead of 14 seconds pulled from the middle of it. The board watched in silence. You could see the real timeline unfold exactly as I remembered it me at the station at 2:06 a.m., laughing quietly with another patient's granddaughter about something unrelated entirely, a joke about the vending machine eating her dollar. Then, at 2:47, the alarm. Me, moving instantly, disappearing from frame toward room 314. Voices. Urgent. The crash cart. Nothing resembling neglect. Nothing resembling delay. Renata sat frozen, staring at the screen like she was seeing the night for the first time, because in a way, she was. Grief had shown her version of events that made sense of her pain. The truth showed her something harder to sit with, that sometimes there is no failure to point to. Sometimes a good nurse does everything right, and a good father's heart still stops, and nobody is to blame, and that is the whole unbearable truth of it. She didn't apologize to me in that room. I didn't expect her to, but she didn't fight the board's decision either. When they cleared me of every allegation within the hour, 3 days later, Renata came to the hospital during visiting hours, not to see a patient, but to find me. She stood at the nurse's station, the same one from the video, and she didn't say sorry, not exactly. What she said was, I needed it to be someone's fault. I'm sorry. It had to be yours. I told her I understood. I meant it mostly. Understanding doesn't erase what those 3 weeks cost me. The suspicious looks, the sleepless nights, the fear that 6 years of work could be erased by someone else's grief. But I've learned that people in pain will sometimes reach for the nearest explanation instead of the true one, not because they're cruel, but because nobody is prepared for how randomly, unfairly quiet real loss can be. Corwin and I still talk sometimes. He visits room 314's current occupant more than he needs to, he told me once. Almost like he's making up for something. I don't think he owes anyone that. But I understand needing to. As for me, I went back to work the following Monday. Prayasha met my eyes again in the break room, sheepish. And we didn't talk about it. We just started talking about everything else again, like normal. Because that's what recovery from something like this actually looks like. Not a big dramatic reconciliation, just Tuesday morning coffee, same as always. I still think about Arthur sometimes. On quiet nights, I think about his riddles. I think about the fact that a tablet propped against a window, meant only to let a daughter hear her father's voice one more time, ended up being the thing that told the truth when nobody else could. He'd have liked that, I think. One more riddle, solved in the end, just not the kind he meant to leave behind.